All right, let's talk about biomes. So, biomes are determined by the temperature and the precipitation of an area. So, how hot or how cold it is, and how much rainfall or how little rainfall are going to determine what the biome's going to be like. So, if you look at the graph on the right here, the x-axis, notice it's going from hotter to colder, which is a little bit opposite. So always pay attention to the graph and the numbers, which way they're increasing or decreasing. On this graph, warmer and cooler. So we can see the different kind of biomes, hot deserts, and then grasslands, and then tundra, really, really cold. And then going up the y-axis, we can see how much rainfall is going on in centimeters. So not a lot of rainfall, again, desert. Medium amounts gives us the forests, and lots of rainfall with lots of heat are the tropical rainforests. So this is kind of how they're organized by rainfall and temperature. Over here we can see a map. There's a pattern on the globe of where these biomes are located. So all along the equator are the tropical rainforests. And then if you go above or below the equator by 30 degrees north or south latitude, there's the deserts. And then we get the temperate forests and deciduous forests. And then we'll get the tundra and the taiga the further up we go towards the poles, which are cooler. Here's another layout of the same thing, just laid out in a different way visually. So you can see what kind of vegetation exists with these different temperatures and precipitation amounts. Now the reason that's happening is the Earth is heated unevenly, and because of that we have warm equators where the sun directly hits the equator of the planet, and then it's colder up here. Well, hot and warm mix by convection and wind and ocean currents. Hold on a second, this guy's crazy. All right, so then the rainforest will drop all of their moisture out of their air. The air will rise up and drop down in the deserts where it's hot and dry because there's no moisture in the atmosphere. And then that'll pick up again and fall down in the deserts with a little more moisture. It's picked up over the oceans, and then we get deserts. So if you look, it's forest, desert, because of these air wind cells and the way that the ocean circulates. It helps the air to mix like that. My little dog is out of control, you guys. I'm really, really sorry. Okay, so here's another look at it by elevation. Sometimes elevation can affect how trees grow, so that can affect biomes as well. This is in your book. Good to look at. You can see all of the biomes on the planet, where they're located on the planet, and you can also see a pattern if you study this a little bit. Okay, so it's important you know how to read these climate graphs. So on these graphs, the red is going to be temperature, and the blue is going to be precipitation levels. Here's the months of the year. Anything below 0 is not a growing season because plants can't grow in freezing weather, 0 degrees Celsius. So like the pull-out says here, when the precipitation line is above temperature, then the plant growth is going to be limited by the limiting factor, which in this case would be temperature. This example graph, the precipitation dips below the temperature, so we're going to have plant growth limited by how much rainfall is received for those plants. Another way to see these climate graphs is by bar and line. So sometimes you'll see it like this. The bar is the precipitation in millimeters for this one. Make sure you read. It could be centimeters, it could be inches. You got to look at it. And then the line up above is the temperature. So you can see a characteristic of the rainforest is a pretty constant warm temperature and quite a bit of rainfall. It does have a dip, but it's raining all the time there. And that's why we have these beautiful plants with broad leaves to capture the rain. We've got these canopies and layers of plants, and they actually block the sunlight from coming down, so you have a very clean forest floor and a lot of biodiversity. So there's tons and tons of variety in a tropical rainforest. So it also is considered to have a high net primary productivity, or high NPP, which means there's a lot of resources to pass on through the various food web levels. So one important thing we'll get into later is that the rainforest since it has all these plants and so much variety, people think it has great soil, but it doesn't. It has very poor nutrients in the soil because the plants are immediately taking those nutrients up into them to thrive and continue on their life. So people clear it out because the rainforest isn't making them any money, so they want to make money, cash crops or cattle farms. They clear it out. If they've planted cash crops, they're hoping to use those nutrients like the native trees of the rainforest, and they're not there. They're there for maybe one season, and then they're gone. And they don't get replenished because they've cut away the forest that puts those nutrients back into the ground. So then they have to slash and burn another section to keep going with their cash crops, or add fertilizer, and that gets costly and has some other problems we'll talk about called eutrophication. All right, deciduous forest, just remember for this one, deciduous means that it loses its leaves. This got in front of the other one, sorry. It's just oak and hickory and maple. They lose their leaves during the fall and the winter. They turn these beautiful colors. You can see there's pretty constant rainfall and the temperature spikes. It's cold, very cold look in the winter, and it gets pretty warm in the summer. The coniferous forest is like what we've got in the San Bernardino Mountains, the Los Angeles Mountains. We've got the evergreen trees, so they don't lose their leaves and change colors. We've got short summers and cold winters. The desert is like it sounds. It's dry, and if it's the cold desert, it's cold and not much rainfall, not much vegetation. The temperate desert is what we have. Sorry about these pictures being in the way, but cold winter, hot summer, and then we don't get a lot of rainfall, and we have spikes, really hot summers, and pretty cool in the winters. Tropical desert's hot all year long with pretty much no rain, so yuck. Grasslands and savanna, we've got constant temperatures, and then we have the wet season and the dry season. So remember, maybe you've seen some nature shows where there's the watering hole and it dries up, and then the savanna is like in trouble, and all the animals have to try to find the one watering hole, and then competition's a big thing for that resource. The prairie, that's our Midwest. It's really windy. There's a lot of fires because the wind evaporates the water so quickly. Trees don't really grow here, so it's a lot of grass. Grass can do well here. Grass is really good for soil, and it turns the soil very fertile. And so our early settlers cleared that grass out to grow our crops, and that's why it's our breadbasket. But since it's so windy, our topsoil could easily blow away, as we found out during the Great Dust Bowl incident during the Depression. The cold grassland, the tundra, it's windy, icy, really long winters, not a lot of rain, pretty cold all the time, and you only get 7 weeks of summer for growing season, so very limiting factor. So not a lot grows there, so just small things, grasses, mosses, and lichens. One important biome, and you can see on this map, this is California, this is where we live. We have this chaparral, and it's very unique. You can see very few places have it on the planet. The soil's pretty dry. It doesn't hold water real well. Erosion happens a lot. It's very fire prone. It's got kind of hot and dry there. And the plants keep the loose soil kind of bunched together to prevent erosion, but when a fire comes, it burns all the plants, and then erosion happens, and we get mudslides and landslides when it does rain. So Southern California has a very unique biome, chaparral. There's always one or two chaparral questions in the multiple choice for the AP exam, so it's good to know about it. So you can see the rainfall is typical for us. We get more rain in the winter, not so much in the summer, which is opposite the rest of the world. So sometimes for AP students in California, it's hard to think about that because it's our normal, but it's not normal for the rest of the people. And the temperatures are pretty mild. It doesn't get super extreme, really. So it's beautiful, it's unique, and we need to take care of it. It's actually endangered, so there's a lot of species there that are in trouble because we keep clearing it away or we lose it to careless brush fires. All right, so we'll talk about aquatic biomes next lecture. So make sure you can kind of understand the basic climate graphs for the biomes we talked about. They're in your book. Make flashcards, just be able to recognize the general shapes and patterns of the precipitation and the rainfall, and we should be good.